Hi guys, so we are going to be working on coloring our haunted house this week. This is for my bigger kids, my 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So we will be using a few different things depending on what you have access to at home. So number one, I would really prefer that you do use the colored pencils if you have any when you are coloring. So I have already started coloring mine over here in this window, but I wanted to show you a couple of pictures of big kind of old houses at night. So what I'd like to talk about with you today is variety, and variety is just a nice word for using a lot of different things. So in art, if you are just using one color, like you're just using blue for the whole sky, for this whole area, it gets very boring looking, and there's no variety there because you've only chosen one color. So if you add others, like you can see in this sky, there's some pinks and purpley colors, the blue, light blue. There's even some orange down here towards the bottom where the sun is starting to set. So that variety, that different amount of colors, the different colors that are being used, makes it very beautiful. So when you are coloring your work today with your haunted house, I want you to try to use variety. If you do not have colored pencils still, you can still do this with crayons. You just need to be sure that you are pressing lightly with the crayons, because if you are still pressing too hard, it's not going to mix at all, because a crayon has way more wax in it than our color pencils do. So the color pencils do blend a lot nicer than your crayons will. So what I wanted to show you these pictures for as well is that when the sun is starting to set, you're going to see all of these beautiful pictures, or these beautiful colors in the sky, but that color is going to kind of affect your house too. So what I would suggest you pick first is which colors you would like to use in your sky for your haunted house. I'm going to be using purple and blue because I really like those colors, but you could also try using, I would stick to just two. I know people have used blue and green before and it's come out looking all right. You could even maybe use purple and orange, because as you can see there is some orange down here, but you would probably want to make that purple a bit darker so it would actually look like the sun's going down instead of it being in the daytime, especially if you have the moon in the sky. So you are going to pick two colors. So like I said, I'm using purple and blue, and you would color in your sky with those purple and blues with your colored pencils, and then you would probably be mixing that color in with your house. So if we look over here at my picture, my drawing, I already colored my house brown, most of it, and over here in this darker area, I've actually started to mix in some blue and some red, because the blue is coming from the sky and the red is from that purple that's going to be in the sky. So they're kind of mixing together, and you're going to kind of see those colors from the sky in the things that you're drawing. So if you look at this house probably isn't this dark blue. It's just the colors from the sky kind of bouncing off of the house. So lots of different things that you can be trying with. I kind of like this one the most to look at, but let's go ahead and move this over some. And all I need you doing is making sure that you are, I would probably go ahead and just color the whole thing with one layer to start with before I worry about mixing other colors. So I've already gone in and filled in almost all of my haunted house with that brown, because I wanted mine to be like a wood house. So if you chose brick, it might be more red, or if it's like cement block, it might be more grays and different colors like that. So I used brown because I wanted my old house to be wood, and then I'm going to mix in some, where's my colors? Some reds and blues, like I was saying. So I would maybe start with blue, and that is going to start to darken it up some. Hopefully you can see, yeah. So I just go ahead and mix in some blue to get it a little bit darker. And if you go off a little, that's fine because you're probably going to be coloring the sky with that color too. But just do your best. So I go ahead and mix in a little bit of blue through it. And then I'm going to go right over the top of it with a little bit of red. Now here is an important part to remember. If it starts to, so when you mix red and blue, you get purple. So if it starts to get a little too purpley and you don't want it to be that purple, what I would suggest is that you just get your brown back out and you go back over it with another layer. So I know with the kids that have been here for a couple years, you've probably heard me talking about, think of it like a cake. And if you really, really like icing, you want to put a lot of icing on the cake. You don't just want one layer of icing. You're going to slather tons and tons of icing on that cake. So here I'm just going back over it to make sure it still looks more brown instead of getting too purpley looking. But that purple is still going to look good, especially with our sky. So I don't want to spend too much time on showing you about mixing colors because we already talked about that in our dot drawing that we did a few weeks ago. So hopefully you did that and you've already practiced, but just make sure that you are using variety and you're using a few different colors to mix in. And I would suggest when you are mixing those colors that you use some of the colors that you want for your sky. So like I said, I was going to use purple and blue. So you would maybe want to stick with the reds, blues, and purples. And if you're going to go with blue and green, you could probably do some blues and greens and yellows down in here instead of the red, blues, and purples. So make sure that you're picking one or the other. For anything, so I have already outlined my haunted house with black marker, so you could do that as well if you have time. I think a lot of you already have outlined it because I already have you practicing or I have you that you got that down already with all of my other videos. If we look here at my tree, so what I did to make it look kind of like it was glowing is this was a very small area, so I don't want to try to trace with marker if it is a teeny tiny area that I have drawn. So if you drew your haunted house small or a lot of your details are teeny tiny, then you will probably not want to try to trace that in marker. So here all I did was I traced those lines and I pressed hard with my orange and then I colored it in with yellow. And I'm probably going to do that same technique for my windows to make it look like there's a light shining from inside the windows because I want it to look like there's lights or maybe like candles burning inside the house, like somebody's in there. And the last thing is if you look at my little fence here, I would probably, again, since that got so small, I would go in with my brown and press hard to just trace the outline because it is a lot easier to trace teeny tiny details with this pencil tip than it is a marker's tip because not only is the marker a little bit bigger than a pencil, it's also going to, the ink is going to spread or bleed out just a little, which is going to take up even more room. And if you draw teeny tiny, room is not something you really have. So I'm just going to press really hard here, tracing over my lines, and then I can go in and press lightly to color it in. And you should then still be able to get your details to pop out instead of all of it blending in with the background. So if you did draw everything too small, you are definitely going to need to be using colored pencils, and you're going to need to press very hard with them for the outline and then lightly to color it in so you can still see your details. All right, so once you have finished coloring the whole thing, there's a couple of different techniques that you can try if you would like to and you have access to this. So in the past, I have had you guys paint the sky, with watercolors. So if you have some watercolors at home, I know I've had quite a few kiddos that have been asking me, when are we going to paint, Miss Mobley? When are we going to paint? If you're one of my kids that are at home, hopefully you have some paints. A lot of my kids at school don't have paint. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to paint here at school. So if we have time, maybe in class, when I come to your class, we'll be able to. So all you'll be doing is picking those two colors again. So I'm going to get my paints here. You'll dip your brush into the water, because with watercolor you need water. And I'm going to get into the purple a little bit. And I'm not pressing hard. I'm just like, think of it like like a puppy is licking you, or a little kitty cat is licking you. You're not grinding or scooping like ice cream, just like a little kitty cat lick. And then you just go in and start to brush it around into the sky area. So I'm going to put the purples down near the bottom of my sky, and I want it to fade into a blue color. So again, be very, very careful that you're staying, I guess here it's going to be staying outside the lines. And as you go, it's going to start to get dry. You'll hear this scritchy, scratchy sound, and that means you need more water. Be very, very careful about how much water you use. So I got some more water, and it's a little dark down here, so I'm going to go back down over this really dark area and kind of try to blend it out a little bit more. But if you are using lined paper, I probably would not suggest that you paint, because that lined paper is very thin. It is not going to be able to absorb. It's not going to be able to drink up a lot of that water, and your paper will tear. I'm using a construction paper right here. So it is going to be able to drink up a little bit more water, but even this paper can't drink up a lot. If you have watercolor paper, there actually is specific watercolor paper. You could try and use that, but it can be kind of expensive. So that's why I didn't really suggest using watercolor paper. So once I get some blues down here, I'm going to rinse out my brush, pressing lightly at the bottom of my cup and just rinsing it out. And then I'm going to go in and get some blue. Again, like a little puppy dog or a kitty cat is licking you. I'm going to go right over the top here of the purple and start to blend it in. And that is how we would paint the sky if we had watercolor. So just blending in. If you have any wispy areas like the clouds or a ghost, you might not want to outline them and just go around them. When I say wispy, I'm like something that you might be able to see through, like a ghost or the clouds. But if you paint over them, that's not a big deal. Now, if you don't have any if you don't have any watercolors, what I would suggest instead is, let me move this. So I have my little paper here. What I would suggest is that you first use a color that you want in your sky. So say we're going to color it blue. Let me put some little blue down here. So imagine you've colored your whole sky blue with the color pencil. Then I would draw in with marker, hopefully you have a marker, with some blue marker, and then maybe even some purple marker, because like I said, I wanted to use blue and purple. So I'm going to just go back around it with some purple, and then I'm just going to take my brush and I would get it pretty wet, and you can kind of use marker as a watercolor if you don't have watercolor. So that's what we're doing here. So now I'm just going to go right over the top, and I'm just going to blend it out. And this is going to get that purple and blue to move around a little bit, and it'll be kind of pretty. So if it starts to get dry, get some more water. You can just keep blending it out. Now it is going to be a lot lighter if you're using this technique than it would if you have actual watercolors, because the watercolors are a lot more vibrant and prettier, stronger. They're stronger color. Another way you could do it, if you don't want your sky to be super dark, is you could do it like this, where I just drew some little wispy clouds, and instead of coloring much in the background or at all, I just went right over it with a wet brush. If you don't have a brush at home, you could use like a cotton swab or a Q-tip and get it a little wet and just go right over it. So pretty much anything that you can get a little bit wet, maybe even a tissue, but the tissue might tear some. But again, if you're using lined paper at home, I would not suggest that you get that lined paper wet, because it's just going to fall apart. So I will post a picture of mine when I am finished with painting it and coloring it. But this was from last year, our example. So your sky should come out looking a little like this, but we're coloring it differently using colored pencils. So take your time, use a lot of these different techniques that I've talked about today, and that blending with colored pencils that we've talked about in the past. All right, guys, I can't wait to see your haunted houses. I'm so excited to see them. You can send me a picture on Schoology in Class Dojo, or come to your Zoom time and show me in your Zoom class. Bye, guys, and happy Halloween.